Thank you so much. FGM means female genital mutilation, and it's an harmful cultural practice and a violation of basic human rights, that is specifically of women and girls. We have different types of FGM. We have type 1, which is called clitoridectomy, which involves the total or partial removal of the clitoris. And then we have type 2, which is called excision, which involves total or partial removal of the clitoris, and then the inner lips of the vagina, which are called labia minora.
Okay, so we are live on Facebook, sir, and we are good to go.
Okay.
Okay. A very good evening to all of our viewers and a very happy Eid Mubarak. Welcome to another series of podcast of Humans of Mitti Ke Rang. Today we have Mr. Tony Mwebia from Kenya. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so for a little introduction about Mr. Tony Mwebia, he is a Kenyan online and offline activist against female genital mutilation, also known as FGM, and other harmful cultural practices. His and hashtag Maan and FGM campaign on social media works on rally policymakers and all stakeholders to involve more men in the fight against FGM. We will know more about it and we will start with the conversation. So, my first question to you will be like, what is FGM and how it is culturally practiced in Kenya? Because people generally don't know what FGM actually is.
Thank you so much. FGM means female genital mutilation, and it's an harmful cultural practice and a violation of basic human rights, that is specifically of women and girls. We have different types of FGM. We have type 1, which is called clitoridectomy, which involves the total or partial removal of the clitoris. And then we have type 2, which is called excision, which involves total or partial removal of the clitoris, and then the inner lips of the vagina, which are called labia minora. And then we have infibulation, which involves the total or partial removal of the clitoris, and then excision of the lips of the vagina, that is the labia majora and the labia minora, and then the narrowing of the vagina opening, so that we are just left with a small opening to pass urine and menstrual flow. Then we have type 4, which involves anything else that is done to the external female genitalia for non-medical reasons. So those are the types of female genital mutilation that we have worldwide. In Kenya, the national prevalence of FGM is at 21%. That is according to the Kenya Demographic and Health Studies of 2014. But we have communities with very high prevalence, as high as 94% among the Somali communities, which means that 9 out of every 10 girls in that community have undergone FGM. Then we have communities with as high as 86%, the second highest, which is among the Samburu community, which means 8 out of 10. The same goes to the Kisii community, which is at 84%. And then we have Maasais at 78%. And then we have the Merus and Embus at 31%. And then we have the Kalenjins at 28%. And then the national data now comes down at 21%.
So I would like to ask you, like, what is the age group for girls? Like, this happens, and obviously this is a violation of human rights. So what is the age group of girls that are like, they went through this? Most age group, what's the age group of the girls?
So most of the girls that are taken for FGM are in between 8 to around 15 years. So it mostly happens between 8 to 15 years. But we have seen instances whereby women, elderly women who have already been married at their 30s and 25 or so, being forced to undergo FGM due to societal pressure. Some of them even present themselves willingly. We even had a case last year of women cutting each other. So one performed FGM, they performed FGM on each other because the societal pressure was so much on them, and they felt that they needed to conform to the social norm.
Yeah, so as you're saying that women are like bound to do because of the societal pressure. What kind of societal pressure it is, and how did it start?
I will say that female genital mutilation is a cultural practice that has been practiced over years. So before we were born, it was there. So it has been passed from one generation to another, and people have continued to practice it without understanding that it's an harmful cultural practice. So
What
you
is the
find out,
belief behind it? What is the belief behind practicing this?
there are several myths that the communities have when it comes to FGM. So in some of the communities, they say that if your clitoris is not cut, it's going to grow to the size of a penis, and you're now going to compete with your man. They also say that in some of the communities, they say if it's not cut and it touches the end of a baby when you're giving birth, the baby is going to die. In some
Okay.
communities, they say that it makes women to stink. In others, they say that so there are so many myths and unverified stories that are behind this that makes women get stigmatized. And
Stigmatized,
also, you
yes.
find out in most of these communities, there are sanctions that come for not undergoing FGM. So a woman who has not undergone FGM will not be allowed to take part in the societal celebrations and ceremonies. His husband also will not be around to sit down with other men. These women are not
Okay.
allowed to cook for the elders in the society. They cannot they cannot perform some of the duties in the society. So those myths and those sanctions are the ones that put pressure on women and girls to continue practicing FGM.
Okay, what are the health issues that girls face after going through FGM? Because it's basically, I don't think it's good for health.
Well, allow me to say that FGM is like an accident. So the bodies of every individual reacts differently to this trauma of FGM. So
Okay.
in some cases, we'll have excessive bleeding. That depends with the bodies of the person who is cut. There is severe pain because in some instances there's massive cutting, like in the case of infibulation and excision, and also type 1. So there's excessive pain because there's no anesthesia, and this is something that is done by old women in most instances with no anesthesia or anything. So you find out also there is risk of tetanus, risk of transmitting diseases like HIV and AIDS. There's also physical harm because sometimes the girls are pinned down by 10 to 15 women who hold them down, pin them down when they are being cut. So there are so many immediate health issues of FGM. And then in the long term, because of the scarring tissue that comes with the FGM, then you find out some of the women are not able to deliver normally, and when they go to deliver, they tear up, and this is a long time effect. Some of the women also um, have fistula out of FGM. So there's so many complications at different levels when it comes to FGM, and that's why the doctors and the research that has been done shows that there is no medical benefits whatsoever of FGM, because there's also the psychological effect of the same. Because remember, in most instances, you are a young girl, you have grown up with your parents, with your aunties and your grandmother, and you've trusted them. And then one day, they just stand against you, pin you down, and then start cutting your private parts. That trauma is there,
Yeah.
and the stress, and you cannot understand what is happening at that time because no one prepares you for the effects of FGM. They just tell you they're making you a woman, they're making you a grown up, but they never tell you the effects that will follow, the pain, the suffering that is going to follow FGM.
Okay, so that's very painful. So when FGM became public, because and like public in social media, and when people started talking against it, because when you feel it's wrong and when you feel it's violating human rights, then you start talking about it. So in that way, when it became public, and when you came to know about it.
Are you asking me why did I become public to this?
No, no, I'm asking how you came to know about it and how FGM became a talking topic in Kenya.
Okay, now there has been campaigns against FGM in Kenya since 1980s. And even recently, our president, while speaking at the ICPD conference and also at the Women Deliver conference in Canada a year ago, declared that he was going to end female genital mutilation in Kenya by the year 2022. That is within the next 2 years, which we are still hoping and to see what will happen. So there has been discussions about FGM since way back. So in the year 2013, I went to do volunteer work with one of the organizations dealing with urban refugees in Nairobi. And they had a project on FGM that came up while I was volunteering. And then they gave me an opportunity to become the project assistant for that project. So the law against FGM and just been passed in Kenya in October of 2011. That is the Prohibition of Female Genital Mutilation Act that makes FGM illegal in Kenya and prohibits it from happening. So they wanted to make sure that all the refugees living within Nairobi are aware of the law because it's applicable to everyone within Kenya. And then here I am. We start going around the different places in Nairobi and talking to the refugees and explaining to them about FGM. So we have doctors with us, we have lawyers with us, we have psychologists with us, speaking to them and explaining to them why it needs to stop. So there's this one day that I went to the Somali community. We have a large Somali community in Kenya. And the refugees, most of them who come from Somali and then Dadaab, and then they come to Nairobi. We were having a dialogue with them. And then on that day, the person who was supposed to do the moderation of the dialogue did not show up. So I was required to moderate the session. And here I am sitting down with several men, around 20 of them, and they are really sharing their stories about FGM. So one man particularly touched me because he was like, he shared his story how he lost his wife. They were on the journey from Somali coming to the refugee camp, and then the wife was pregnant. Unfortunately, she had undergone the worst form of FGM, that is type 3, infibulation. And she went into labor. They are on their voyage. There is no medical officer to attend to her. So it's just the tradition of birth attendants to do that. So she struggled like for so long with the baby. And when finally the baby came, she bled to death. And then a day after, the baby also passed on. And then I wondered, listening to all these men, because they were sharing their stories, saying that some of them were saying the economic burden that is coming with FGM to their families, because their women are always in and out of hospital because of the complications. Some of them were sharing the way their women have suffered fistula and they cannot be able to enjoy sex with them. Some of them were sharing the way their women, they do not enjoy making love to their loved ones, and they had to go and solicit for sex from commercial sex workers from other communities which are not undergone FGM. Then I was sitting down there and looking at the conversation that was going on, because at that moment I was doing a lot of research on FGM for my work purpose. And I could not see any stories of men out there speaking against FGM, because even to date, I am yet to see a man in national TV in Kenya speaking and saying that, yes, my wife suffered fistula out of FGM, and this is how we were able to deal with it as a family. So because of the egoistic nature of men, most of them do not want to share their stories. They don't want to be ashamed. They want to look like men enough. Men do not speak. Men do not share their problems. But when you dig deep and listen to them, the men are also, they also see that this is not something good that we are doing to our women. We need to speak up. So I thought, after I was done with that, I thought, why not start an online campaign and start challenging all stakeholders and NGOs and activists and everyone working on ending FGM to make sure that we pass the same message to the women and girls, the ones that we are passing to the women and girls. The same message needs to be passed to the boys and the men. Because if you look at the reasons for FGM, most of them, you look at them deeply and analyze them, they all lead to increasing marriageability. So the most reasons why women and girls undergo FGM is for them to get men to admire them and men to marry them, because they are told once you are cut, you are a grown-up woman, you will get more dowry in terms of cows because you are a strong woman, you are beautiful. So if you look deeply, it's all about getting married. And that's why we really need to talk to the men and make them understand why they need to stop discouraging this.
Okay, so sir, you said that there are the FGM that happens with the girls are mostly done by the women of the family. So on that note, what went through you that you started hashtag man and FGM? Why you thought it's important to end men? Like because generally what happens, people go to those genders on whom this is happening. Like others will go to the girls, like they will say don't do it because it's not good for your health. So but what went through your mind that you started man and FGM?
Thank you so much for that. As I said, as I mentioned earlier, I said that if you look at all the reasons for FGM and analyze them deeply, you realize that the reason as to why most of these women succumb to the pressure of FGM is for marriage reasons, because the community believes that a woman who has undergone FGM is mature enough to be married off.
Married off.
They also believe that it's a rite of passage from childhood to adulthood.
Okay.
Also, a woman who has been cut is more appealing to men, and many men will be like fighting to her and something of the sort to marry her. And now, most FGM is done by women on fellow women, and men are not allowed to sit down and see what happens during the actual cutting. You will never, there's no community whereby it's men who cut the women, or any community. I'm yet to come across any community whereby the men are allowed to see what happens during the actual cutting. So the men are not aware of what is even cut in most of the communities. So they just keep quiet. So for them, it's just to provide the resources to the women for the ceremonies and to wait for the girls to get prepared. And then they sell them off to get the cows and the dowry. And that is for the men. So why I started Men and FGM is to make sure that the men now understand what happens at the actual cutting. What happens at that point? So what we do is we use charts, we use videos, we try to use as much visual materials as possible to educate the men and show them which are these parts that are cut. Because in most of our African communities, sex is something that is sacred. And when it's done, it's either done at night, or if at all done during the day, people just cover themselves. So a man, in most cases, even if they are married to these women, they will never understand. They will never even have a chance of seeing this organ. So they have no idea what we are talking about in most instances. That's why we are really trying to have them join the conversation, educate them, let them know what this FGM is doing to the women, the suffering that they're going through, and then have them speak up through the hashtag, and also have create a critical mass of men and boys who understand that female genital mutilation is bad. Because once we have enough men speaking up, and other fellow men will be able to see that there are other men who are speaking up, then everyone will join in and we will transform the social norm. Because if men today woke up in Kenya and in our communities and said, we are not going to marry anyone who is going to be cut, I'm telling you, FGM will be done today forever. But we are not saying that we discriminate the women who have been cut. We are saying that going forward, the men should start, we should come up with a generation that of men who understand why FGM is bad, and we should discourage it from happening to the next generation, because we cannot discriminate the ones who have already undergone FGM, because most of them were not even aware what was done to them. Yes.
Yeah. So, sir, you said that men don't know what actually happens when, and there is not. And I believe that if you want to break a stigma, you need to get it talking. Like you have to talk about it. You have to make it a discussion. It should be a topic of the discussion in the room you are sitting. So on that note, how you felt, because you said men generally don't speak and don't come up on public and on national platforms to speak about or against it. So when what what you felt when you came to know about it, and what are the challenges you faced after starting this activism?
Thank you so much for that. I will say that I come from a community that has a prevalence of FGM at 31%.
Okay.
And when I started speaking up against FGM, everyone was shocked because I have been in my own vernacular radio station, like I think more than 10 times in different radio stations, speaking my own vernacular language. And people could call in and men were asking, why are you speaking about issues to do with women? This
Not
is not
our
our topic.
issue. Yeah.
Yes, this is not our topic. But with time, they have gotten used to it that anytime I'm on radio, everyone is like, this guy will always come and talk about FGM. So they got used to me. And
Okay.
now I'm seeing many other men coming up and speaking up. So what we are doing is what we call popular mobilization. That's why you see we have an hashtag online whereby we encourage any man out there from any community, from any country, who is talking about FGM to share and use the hashtag men and FGM, so that other men out there can be able to see it's okay for men to speak up against
Okay.
this harmful cultural
Yeah.
practice. We are using the radio stations. I'm always on radio station. I've been on radio stations more than 15 times personally. I have been in all national TV stations in Kenya. I have been on newspapers trying to make sure that we mobilize as many men as possible and
To get
make
the
them
thing
understand
talking,
that,
we need to get it talking.
yes,
Like, yes, we need to
get
more
them
people to
talking.
talk about it. Yeah.
Yes, we need as many people. Once we normalize the conversation around
Yes.
FGM and we make it a topic of interest or
Hmm.
fashionable in quotes for the men, just like we talk about football every now and then, just like we talk about politics. Once we
Yeah.
get to that point, then we will be so close to ending FGM.
Yeah. Because once you start talking in the room, then you feel that, okay, I need to know more about it before I can sit in a discussion about it. So like that, you educate men in a discussion. So what are the positive outcomes of your activism till now?
Well, I would like to say that I'm so happy for so many things that have happened since 2013. I can say right now we have a policy on ending a national policy on ending FGM in Kenya that was passed last year, and engaging men and boys is one of the key policy areas in Kenya. Also, I remember sitting down in the review of UNFPA UNICEF joint program on ending FGM for 2018 to 2022. Engaging men and boys is one of them there. One of the things that they are focusing on. And I can tell you that right now, everyone working on ending FGM in Kenya and beyond, they're talking about the need to engage men and boys. It's now it's now the fashionable thing to do. Every organization is trying to see how they are able to engage men and boys. But it was not easy. When I started the hashtag in 2013, I can tell you some of the people who are now shouting and joining and happy to engage men and boys were not speaking the same language because they were asking, why do we need to engage the men? It's not the men
Yeah.
who are cut. So we have had several confrontations with people. We talked with different people. And right now, most of the people are convinced. Now, what we are trying to do is to make sure that we now go offline also. We have started going offline and educating the communities and building champions from the different communities and making sure that the message is spread to the communities and everyone joining in the fight against FGM. So much have happened to the extent that last year I was recognized as a national hero in Kenya and awarded by the president of Kenya for the work
Wow.
on ending FGM. So many things have really happened, and I'm really happy that someone somewhere saw that I was doing something that was
Which is
work.
right. Which is
Yes,
the
so
need of
many
the
things have
hour.
happened.
Okay, so I would like
Yes.
to ask you one thing. In 2013, when you first went to talk about FGM personally, like a one-to-one conversation, what was going through your mind? What was your feeling? And what was the reaction you received?
Allow me to say that, funny enough, I come from a community that practices FGM, but in my family and where I come from, I had not like encountered anything to do with FGM. Even at the university, I had the lecturers mentioning it as an harmful cultural practice, but I never took interest in the same. And as I said, in 2013, when I joined the fight against FGM, it was by accident. It was I was a volunteer, and here is a project from UN, and it's a chance for me to make some money. So when I was told join, now you can become the project assistant because you're doing a good job as a volunteer. I was like, this is my time also to get some money. So I joined the project. So I was in shock when we went to the first presentation, and the doctor was projecting this short film of young girls being cut and screaming, and the women and they were bleeding and all these complications. And then I listened to the women sharing their stories. It was really touching for me. I must be honest. And that's why, as I told you, I was touched by this story of this specific man. And I vowed that, yes, this project will come to an end, but I will continue spreading the message out there and challenging everyone to join the fight against FGM. Yes.
So, sir, how you educate men? Like, what are your medium and how you work online or offline? How you reach to men to educate them about FGM?
Well, as I said that we are doing online campaigns. Like, for example, I'll give an example. To mark the 16 days of activism last year, we and the voices of 16 men from 16 different countries in Africa that practice FGM, sharing their message and encouraging fellow men to join the fight against FGM. That is just one example. So we do different online campaigns, specifically targeting the men and encouraging them to speak up. We also, as I said, do vernacular radio stations. Personally, I've been on radio station more than 15 times. We have other men in different communities who go to their radio stations and speak about FGM. We are always on TV stations in Kenya because we get invitations every now and then to go and speak up. So we use every opportunity that we get to speak about FGM. Now, apart from that, we are going to different communities and sitting down with the men and building champions for our movement and making sure that we are training what we call trainers of trainers.
Okay.
So once we train them, they are able to be like our champions and our heroes in these communities. And they now make sure that the message goes on in these communities. So we are both online and offline and trying as much as possible to educate as many people as we can at any given time.
Okay. So, when you started this campaign, hashtag Men and FGM, well, how the women's reacted there? What was the reaction of the
Well,
women?
the women, I would like to say that I remember very well. There is a time I had a confrontation with one of the famous FGM activists based in UK, because I was there asking, there's this discussion that was going on in one of the big meetings, and I was asking, why is it that it's just women who are in this discussion about FGM? And she said that why do we need to have the men in the discussion and the men do not have a vagina? So I would like to say that some reactions from some of the women were not so nice, but many of them supported the idea. We are still trying to ensure that they see men as allies in the fight against FGM, because I would like to say that to date, yes, everyone is speaking about engaging men and boys, and everyone is talking about having the men and boys on board. But when you look at the resources allocation from most of the NGOs and organizations, you see call for proposals. It's women-led organizations, women. So, but now men are in a better position to talk to their fellow men about this thing. So we have been now challenging the donor world and the people who are giving the money for ending FGM and the resources to also channel the resources also to men to make sure that the men can also be able to have their own conversation. And men and FGM simply needs not to be seen as a competition between women and girls and then the men and boys on the other side. No, it needs to be seen as we need to continue to engage the women and girls as we have been doing, but also we beg to find a way of having the men in the conversation and the young boys also, so that we can be able to move together. Because if you look at the population of Kenya, for example, it's almost, the gender is almost like a half. So there's no way we will be able to move ahead with when we leave one half without the information and them understanding what they need to do. So we really want to see it as a human rights issue, not a women's issue. It's something that needs to be talked about by everyone, and that way we will be able to move together in the fight against FGM.
Okay, so sir, as you say that FGM in Kenya in the communities is a culturally practiced tradition. So when you say something against a tradition, it's somewhere takes time, but it gets down the line. It gets easier to talk about the topic with your generation. But generally, what happens is say that it is performed by the elder people, like the grand generations of the family. So how you plan to like if you are also educating women or if you're talking about it about women, then how you plan to address the elder women, like those who are at the age of 40 plus or 50 plus, the your above generations, how you plan or how you approach them against it?
Well, allow me to say that once you're able to reach out to them and sit down with them, in most cases, I remember in one of the communities where we went and we are sitting down with elders. Most of them were about 60 years. And we are sitting down with them and we trying to explain to them about FGM using the charts and the visuals that we had. And then they were like, one of them said, I went to another training and we were shown a film of how FGM is done. And then we asked them, are you willing to see the film? And they agreed to do it. I can tell you that within the first 10 minutes of the film, most of them were either closing their eyes or they and just walked out and they were just looking and peeping through the window. And the film, after the film, which was just like 15 minutes, the conversation completely changed. They were like, we did not know this is what happens to our women and girls. We really need to stop this. And now we were able to have a conversation in terms of how can we be able to do this? How can we be able to reach to the kings of these communities and make them understand why they need to make a declaration against female genital mutilation? So let me say that there's no generation that is not being reached out to the message, just that for the elderly generation, it's quite difficult in some instances, because I have had an instance whereby I went to speak to a community and then there was this elderly woman who stood up and asked me, young man, you're saying that there are complications in giving birth. I have 15 children and I have never seen these complications. and I underwent FGM. So these challenges are there when it comes to the elderly people. But as I said, FGM is just like an accident. Her body reacted in a different way,
Different
and she
way.
was lucky. She was lucky she has not had any complications. So you have to find a way of making sure that you have answers, because they will come up. Some of them will challenge you, the elderly people, and they will tell you this has been happening even before you were born, and we have not seen these complications that you're talking about. So you have always to be ready for these challenges when it comes to the elderly people.
Okay, so we are moving to the end of this session. So lastly, I will like to ask you one thing. How has been the journey so far, and where you look yourself in the next coming 5 or 6 years?
Well, Allow me to say that the journey has been bumpy since 2013. As I said, I started talking about FGM in 2013. When I left the organization that I spoke about, the one that was dealing with refugees, I went to work with the government, and I went to a community where FGM is around 80%. And this is the only community in Kenya whereby they sing and dance openly with the women and escort them to go and get cut. And remember, it's illegal in Kenya. So this community is very arrogant. They harm themselves and they're ready for the government also. So I worked there, and then I left them and started now the movement itself. I decided to focus on it at around 2016. All that time with all the campaigns and online campaigns, no one was really like recognizing what I was doing. But in 2018, I won an award, first of all, with the government, from the government agency responsible for ending FGM in Kenya. So I won the best social media campaign. And I have a trophy. It's just next to me here. So I have a trophy. And then after that was the first recognition that came into my way. And then I was like, okay, we need to keep moving. So I continued with the campaign. And then last year, as I said, in 2019, I was honored as one of the national heroes in Kenya and recognized by the president. Apart from that, I have been able to get several other recognitions like the Gender Equality Champion and so many other. We have won, many FGM campaign has won the Break the Silence award on the sideline of UNGA 74, that is United Nations General Assembly. That was sometime last year. So people have recognized what we have been doing, and so many people are willing to support. Now, going forward, what we are doing and what we want to do in the next 5 years, next 2-3 coming years, we have now started partnering with community-based organizations in different parts of the country. We need people who speak in the language that the community understands. So we are building our champions and a network of organizations through the community-based organizations in different parts of the country. We have what we call 22 hotspot counties in Kenya. That is like 22 states where FGM is very common in Kenya. We will have community-based organizations sign an MOU with them in those communities, and then they join our campaign, and then we are training champions with them. This is something that we have already begun. In fact, we are supposed to have done like two trainings by now, but Corona happened, so we had to adjust things. We are still seeing when we will be able to kick them off again. Once we are able to do that, we also want, in the next 5 years, we see ourselves as a movement in Africa. We want now to expand out of Kenya and have the movement spread its wing, Kenya, and then finally to the whole world. Because if we are able to have a movement of men and boys who understand why FGM is an harmful practice, we have our neighbors here in Somalia who have a national prevalence of FGM at 96%. That means like all the Somali women in that country have undergone FGM because 9 out of every 10 have undergone FGM. Yeah. So we also need to spread this message to the neighboring countries, Ethiopia, Sudan, going all the way and make sure that we have as many men as possible speaking up, because all over the world, we have around 200 million, more than 200 million women and girls who have undergone FGM. It is also in India. I don't know if you know Katna. Call it Katna. And also the Indian community in Kenya practice it to some extent. Yeah. But I'm also happy to say that I have several activists like who are Indians who are also speaking up in India, and we need to have everyone join in, and then together we'll be able to end FGM.
Yeah, it's like we are so much involved in the digitally updated world that we somewhere forget to look behind what is actually somewhere still happening. We need to talk about it no matter how far we are going. So on that note, this was my last question. Thank you so much, Tony sir, for joining with Mitti Ke Rang, and I wish you all the very best for your campaign. I wish you achieve this FGM ends one day and you achieve more success, more awards from the president of Kenya, and I wish men starts talking about it. Men need to talk about it. Thank you so much for joining with us. And
Thank you.
thank you so much to the audience. Stay tuned to the page of Humans of Mitti Ke Rang. We will be back again with another episode of podcast series, Humans of Mitti Ke Rang. Till then, good night and thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Bye. Have a nice time.
Bye. Bye.